So I guess your question is how to keep yourself alive, centered, focused, in one piece, in some kind of working order, when there is so much going on. And when, for example, in your case, which is very sort of in grotesque, reflects the situation we all went through the several years. So you had your challenging period of time, and just when you saw that this is all over, something else starts. And how do you not lose your focus? How do you not lose your spirit? How do you not lose touch with your inner self? And how do you find what you're doing, how to carry on with what you're doing in this new environment, which I feel is promising to change even more. So I don't think this is the end, what is happening. I think we are just in a sort of, in a first section of those waves which started to, we collectively started to experience as humanity. I will start with a sort of very personal story, which helped me to learn important lesson. Once upon a time, I was driving on the motorway after some puncture training, and that was late at night, and I was overtaking a lorry. It was a UK high lane. I was not overtaking the lorry. I was going in my third lane. The huge lorry was going in the middle lane. And then suddenly, as soon as I started, I was just about to go past the lorry because I was in a higher speed lane. He immediately signaled right, and he just pulled up right in front of me, which is something that I never expect to happen, because by the size of the lorry, they shouldn't do it by law. This shouldn't be happening. So the situation was like, my clear thought was like, is this the end? And then I remembered the advice which was given to me in some totally different kind of circumstances. I was actually a passenger with somebody who was a really good driver. And I asked him how he takes the bends and how he manages, because he really, really drive fast and very safe and everything. And he said, if there is a danger, or if there is a bend, or if there is something sudden, don't grip the wheel, lose the grip. And somehow, as by magic, his words came to me when I was navigating this difficult situation. So, of course, I slammed the brakes, because this is what you do. I didn't even think about anything else. Probably, if I would be very courageous by nature and a really good driver, which I'm not, probably I would speed up and I would just, put myself in front of it, because there was probably still time. But I'm neither of those things. So my instinct was to slam the brake. And of course, the car went crazy. The car went like that. But at the same time, because I remember it, I lost the grip. So I held the wheel, obviously. But I didn't do it like this. I was just holding it gently. And somehow, by miracle, car, after doing all this, and after a huge cloud of smoke from my tires and everything, and all these noises, the car, sort of straightened itself, and I was fine. And of course, I signal left, and I just left at the nearest service station, because obviously, I never ever came so close to danger in my life. And of course, before I did that, the lorry realized what he did. He pulled back up into his middle lane as if nothing happened. And luckily, behind me were good drivers and everything, so it was safe. Now, the lesson I learned from it, that even though in the situations when things are, obviously this is an extreme, but I deliberately gave this example because from this extreme, we can figure out how to generally navigate less dangerous, but equally nerve-wracking environment and events and periods of life. So the advice here is lose the grip and ride the wave. Because even though, for example, like you had, I had, we all had some really good plans before the whole craziness started. And I'm not sure, it started with pandemic, we started before the pandemic. I lost track when it started. The only thing I know is that this is going on, and this is not about to end anytime soon, no matter how we all hope. And of course, it feels terrible, and it feels terrible on many levels, depending how we are related to events which are actually happening. But I think also what we need to see here is that when something big happens, when something really, really big happens, where we all involved as a humanity in a short period of time, and it's really intense, and there is no hiding from it, no matter you are in the middle of the pandemic, you're watching the pandemic, you're participating in the war, you're having second-hand war because your relatives are there, you're watching the news. We are all in a situation when we are navigating an environment which we didn't have any reference points before. If you think about pandemic when it last happened, it was probably 100 years ago. So nobody remembers that. I doubt that even our parents, our immediate family told us about it because it was like 100 years ago. As for the war, same situation. When we were in our formative years, we didn't experience the war firsthand. We didn't experience it even secondhand. We didn't experience it so close. So we don't have any reference point. Our formative years, our childhood and formative years, and our beginning of really active working life and our personal development, our professional development came in a time when situation was totally different. So we know how to navigate this, but we have no idea how to navigate fast changing environment. And the thing is, we don't know where it is going to lead us. So basically, the most important thing is not to hold to any rigid preconception of what you are going to do, how it is going to play out, and just ride the wave. Because when there is a huge disruption, every time there is a huge disruption, there is also a big, big, big new, absolutely brand new possibility for something better. And of course, it does not seem so at the time. It does not seem so now at all. However, if you think about it, and I would like to make a reference to natural medicine, generally, when something is happening in the body for a really, 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 really long time, we have a situation of stagnation. It could be energy stagnation, it could be chi stagnation, what is called, it could be blood stagnation, it could be any kind of stagnation. When there is some process, it's sort of, subthreshold, silent, something is going on. Now, something is going on and it's going on and it's going on. And then one day, somehow, this amount of sort of disruption and stagnation and time which went into it comes to a situation where it all sort of translates itself in some kind of acute phase. Now, in natural medicine, any acute disease, cold, flu, whatever, you name it, is seen as an attempt of the body to move the energy, to move the blood, to release and resolve the stagnation. And yes, in a process, it might feel like there is an eruption of something absolutely terrible. And on a body level, you have temperature, you have pain, you have like many, many things happening. But in the actual fact, what body is doing, body is healing itself. And we are supposed to emerge on the other end if you manage the whole situation correctly. If you don't hide, if you don't suppress, if you really take care of our body and soul and everything, then you're supposed to emerge on the other hand with a better energy state, with better resources, because when this thing erupts, it releases all the stagnation, it releases all the suppressed energy, it expels the toxins, and so on. So I feel what is happening now collectively is very similar to this process. Looking at current situation, I'm thinking this is like, to say that this is terrible what is happening now, right at the moment as we speak, is an understatement. It's just inhumane. And this is something which, like, you look at it and you feel like this shouldn't be at all happening, because you feel there's something big and nobody quite understands what it is. On the other hand, if you think about it, with each process like that, what we see a really just a section of this process. Same was with the pandemic, same it is now with war, same with any acute state. We just see some section of this process. We see in the acute stage, and of course we are all, speechless. And we are not quite sure what to do, but we need to remember that we are seeing just this section. There was a long period of preparation for this to happen. There was a long period of stagnation before that. And those energies and toxins and problems and questions and potentials, they were gathering speed and then came to this point, which we are witnessing, or we've been witnessing with the pandemic, where it's all in acute stage and it looks horrifying. And temporarily we are incapacitated almost. We look at it and we're trying to just take it in. We're trying to take it in and see what we can do, what we cannot do. And this is actually important part of the whole thing. We need to really determine what we are going to do about this situation. We need to clarify our contribution, which could be really big, which could be really small, could be really general, could be really personal, and what we are not going to do. And this is really important. This is one of the key to navigating these waves, because when you are just connect to this acute process, to this big mess, to this huge eruption of this collective volcano, then it's very sort of tempting to either totally isolate from it and pretend this is not happening at all, this is not my war, this is not my pandemic, this is not something else. Or there is a temptation sometimes to go straight in without actually thinking whether or not you will be required in this particular role. So I think it's really important in terms of energy management, in terms of like spiritual sort of, keeping your spirit alive, is to first clarify where you stand after the initial shock of whatever is happening, and especially when there are several events happening, which could be, some of them could be collective, some of them could be personal, or there could be huge collective on a wave of many personal changes. Then this is what we do. We determine where we stand. We let ourselves to be shocked. We let ourselves to be fully present. Sometime all we need on the first stage is to be fully present with the experience. And yes, watching the news and seeing things for what they are, because this is history written right in front of our eyes. And of course, nobody wanted to see it this way. I mean, apart from people obviously who created the whole situation. But when we are on a receiving end, then we didn't ask for it. But I think when we really let ourselves experience what is happening fully, this is more than personal. This is because humans are social animals. This is about connection. We all connect. We feel that we have safety when we connect, and we feel we can be ourselves at our fullest when we are part of something bigger. And this is a moment to clarify part of what bigger, sort of part of the collective we are, and so on. So I feel this is how we can create the first sort of response. If there are series of personal events which are really disturbing, or which are really challenging, or which are really not what you planned for, then basically you're dealing with a series of those eruptions. Coming back to the process, I mentioned that we see the section of the process. So things were gathering speed. They came to this sort of, eruption stage. After that, there is a big question mark, because this is the future. We can only guess that looking at human history, no matter how terrible it looks at the moment, I do feel that as a humanity, we are moving to some better place. If you think about it, at least in majority of countries, the crowd doesn't enjoy any longer the sight of somebody prosecuted on the central square. Think about it. As a humanity, it was not so long ago when we were in this situation. So when we look at really big scale of events, this is what is happening. So we are moving to some better state of being as a collective, but obviously we have no idea in which particular historical period of time, what we're experiencing now will go down in history. We don't know. And so we don't know what is a resolution of the process and what are ramifications from this resolution of this process. If we come back to our analogy with body coping with stagnation and then releasing a stagnation in a massive effort in gathering the strength of the body to experience acute illness, then what we are supposed to experience at the end of it all is a better energy state as a collective, more authentic, more aligned with lessons learned, and so on. So I think it's pretty much sort of a big sort of philosophical answer, if you wish. And obviously there are some practical things. I was listening recently to a talk by somebody who was participating in recovery rehabilitation support of victims of sort of terrible terroristic events and so on. So what he found, he said, and I totally sort of intuitively relate to it, and I met it in many shape and form in other sources, but what he said was so beautiful, so concise. He said that when you are actually in this situation, no matter if this first-hand experience or second-hand experience, which affecting you so much that you feel you cannot quite be with yourself because you are somewhere else, you cannot gather your soul together and anchor it on your body. He said you need first to structure the space. Like, for example, when he said, when you are actually in the middle of something, this is the space that you sleep, this is the space you eat, this is the space you have water, and this is where you go, and this is a place to connect with people, and so on. And to structure time, we do this, and then we do that, and we do that. And what I found from my clinical work is very much in line with that in less dramatic situation. I found when people go through really challenging period of time, what happens at some point, we lose the energy to participate. We almost feel like this is a huge wave and it just moving us somewhere. And instead of actually actively riding the wave, so still driving, but very carefully without gripping the wheel, we just basically, just float. And sometimes this is the only answer, but most of the time it is actually not. We still need to participate. We need to keep our grip on ourselves, not on the events, not on the process, but on ourselves. And we need to anchor ourselves in our body and in the present moment, as you rightly mentioned before. So basically, self-care routine. Self-care routine is something which is really, really important in these times. And this is something which you need when you feel you are in this state, when you really need this help, then you really need to create it regardless of what is happening. What is happening could be first hand, again, traumatic experience, or second hand, you're absorbing this, but you need to really create self-care routine, even though you didn't have it in the past.